So I just love the Human Values Center. Can you share a little bit about how that came into being?
Sure, yeah.
And now some of the cool stuff.
Well, in part it came from probably something that's been burning in my heart forever, because I've always wanted to be able to bring the gifts of a holistic professional education to more than just higher education. And so, being able to work with people who didn't go to college and they're in the workplace, or they're in the workplace but they never had those kinds of experiences. Or younger children, it always kind of blew my mind when I started studying human development. Why don't we teach people about this? We haven't given our children enough respect for, they're actually pretty smart and they actually can figure things out, so why not give them the tools? Social and emotional learning is now just becoming an important curriculum piece in our K-12 schools. But gosh, we've known about social emotional learning for 30 years. So what are we holding back for,
I think this idea of kids and being a parent, right, has just boggled my mind in terms of how many lessons there have been for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think whether it's to a lot of the things you're speaking of, watching my own, I want to give them all these things, these external experiences or things, and then realizing, if I was paying attention, if I was actually present with him, all he really wants is to play the same thing over and over, go to the park. There is often a checking in to make sure what is wanted is what I'm actually going after.
Right.
And I think that's similar
It is.
to what you're saying. I feel like we've maybe been bombarded with external messaging, and it becomes part of our just subconscious or something. It's very...
And then over-scheduling our kids, really does them a disservice. I mean, it really does, because creativity is getting lost. And now we're hearing from the workforce, we need more creativity. We need innovative thinkers. Well, where does that come from? It comes from playing with blocks and coloring. And by the way, adults can play with Lego and blocks and crayons. And, that's a great activity with a group of employees as well, is to bring art into the workspace, bring music to the work. There are different ways to spark that creativity. And that's so necessary in getting clarity on what you value.
Yeah. I think this is, there's so many really powerful things. If we have leaned on one side of the brain, analytical or this logical side, but forget about the creative and the artistic and how many more solutions and innovation and all the things that live over there.
And making a heart sing.
And then feeling, That's what I think I love the most, is when I listen to you, when I'm around you, I feel better. I feel I get kind of drawn into your mission and your vision for the world. Do you experience knowing yourself as a presence, as you walk in, people get a chance to have an expanded view?
Gosh.
Do you notice that?
No.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because I think it's very true, and I often find that people don't necessarily see that, but because you embody this, and I think this is what's really important, people become a presence, a space. You are a space that allows this to be real for everyone who comes into your world, in a way that maybe it wasn't just before.
So nice of you to say, Jeff.
Well, but it's very real, and I think some of what I hear you sharing is also that the idea that I become a space. We all become a space if we're connected to our values, and connected to our heart. So anyway, I kind of wanted to...
You're making me emotional.
I love that about you. I love that this is so visceral, for you. So, and that is, that's rare. I feel it's rare in someone as in the upper echelons of leadership who wears their authenticity so plainly. How have you not become jaded to protect that at all costs? I just feel like most of us have spent a lot of time and effort creating a little armor.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that. You can see I'm tearing up here a little bit. For years I would explain it away with, oh, I'm having an allergy attack, or I think I got something in my eye, but it's like, well, it's who I am, so what else am I going to do?
But how did you stay that? Like, how did you keep, I think as kids, many of us knew ourselves as more sensitive souls. But, you know, we get hit and knocked down a few times, a few things happen, and we start to build defenses and defenses.
Yeah, resiliency is something that we need to cultivate in our fellows. I don't know where that comes from, but I think it's important.
As a leader also, I feel sometimes that's interesting. You mentioned that I've talked with several leaders who have a very wonderful, authentic self. And there's sometimes moments in their past where they're like explaining it away versus allowing it. But now that you're in this space,
a friend of mine from the charter, Simon Cohen, used an example when we were down in Mexico at a conference recently, and he shared a story about a woman who was dying, and she was talking to her adult son sitting with her, and she said there are takers in the world, there are givers, and there are multipliers, and be a multiplier. And I think sometimes we need to filter who we spend our time with. You know, recognizing energy, which is what you're alluding to here, and talking about armor and things like this. I think that energy is very palpable, and we have to recognize that. And if it's not healthy, you know, you need to move away from that and surround yourself with your butterflies.
What I love also about you and coming from academia is this idea that, you know, like the woo stuff, it can easily get washed away in a, oh, that's soft or woo-y or whatever, but you bring such a research base to this as well.
I think that's really helped. And you know, the great work that so many neuroscience scholars have brought, I think has opened up the floodgate for recognizing that we've got data to demonstrate that this is good for us. You know, if we're talking about the mindfulness and the meditation and the, you know, going inward, I think that's really helped make it a safer topic versus granola, woo-woo.
Yeah, and so powerful. I think it's, I guess if you were offering advice to leaders who have their own organization or are in the upper echelon of their organization, in terms of cultivating some of the things that you're speaking of, do you have, like, again, I just want to get back to kind of some actionable things for them to start to do for an organization, not just working on themselves, but what can they start to do to create?
Yeah, well, I hope that leaders do have the courage to step up, because frankly, it's good for the bottom line too. So even if you look at it from a business model standpoint, happier people, lower turnover. Getting started might be with, you know, just throwing the question out there, would people like to have meditation here once a week? And bring someone in to teach some very simple breathing exercises, or you know, shaking things up and doing something that changes the environment. You know, like we talked about, bringing community together. So yes, there's an opportunity to create personal work, but then there's an opportunity to build community with the collective. And I think there are lots of creative ways to do that, and you know, every location is different and will be unique. You know, doing the kind of service we talked about earlier out in the community.
Yeah, painting houses or there's plenty,
there's
right?
Plenty
there's
to
need.
Do.
The need is there.
Right.
All one has to do is kind of look, and there's tons of opportunity. I think that's a really great. You had so social and conscious business, like you're a B organization. Can you? I'm not sure that everyone. Could you just share a little bit?
So we are for profit, but we exist solely for social benefit.
Yeah.
So you know, everything we're doing is working with organizations, schools, universities, in order to help make improvement for helping humanity flourish. That's what we're about.
And I love that it's all the way down to your designation as an organization legally, right? Like the integrity, like that's just so powerful. I think as leaders, again, I hope part of what you're hearing, just in being in integrity all the way through every decision, even the corporate entity can represent who and what you stand for, your values, like you're being.
And I think when you create a safe space with employees, you want to be called out if you're getting too focused on profits or the pipeline or things like that. It's, oh, wait a minute, we have a relationship where I can be comfortable saying, hey, I think you're forgetting the mission, and we're all human. We all need to check in with ourselves and to create a safe space where someone where you can have that kind of frank dialogue.
This is, to me, this is revolutionary, and I don't know how receptive, hopefully more and more receptive organizations are in all fields and industries, but it feels like creating this safe space. I talk with a lot of CEOs, a lot of senior executives, they don't feel that safe.
Yeah, and I'm scared to death of a 360, right? Because I don't want the feedback.
Yeah, I mean and these are the people at the top. I mean, not saying anything for the people who aren't in that position of authority.
Right.
So this idea of just creating safety, creating is not having it be a tremendous threat towards us. Just feels like we have a long way to go still. Are you hopeful, or what is your?
I am, and we're starting to see more work with restorative practices, and restorative practices creates a safe space where you can have dialogue when maybe there has been tension or distrust or inertia, and to be able to sit down and have, there's a whole, you don't just jump in and start having that conversation one day, but you will see a movement of more and more people bringing restorative practices to the organizations.
Yeah. So leaders becoming better at learning the skills, building the muscles of having different kinds of conversations.
Right.
Building different kinds of relationships.
And that means having to be open to receiving feedback too.
It's right? Like we can't be that without being that. Like we can't do that without being that.
Right.
It maybe is.